The Montreal Canadiens are about to make a move that could change everything. A decision that will either cement their playoff identity or expose a fatal flaw in Kent Hughes' vision. The clock is ticking toward July 1st, and one name keeps surfacing in the shadows of Bell Center's front office corridors. This isn't just about adding another body to the roster. This is about answering the question that haunts every Canadiens fan who watched their team get physically dominated when it mattered most. The question that keeps Hughes awake at night, staring at salary cap projections and wondering if he's building a team of skill players or playoff warriors. The brutal truth hit, like a freight train, during those playoff battles. Montreal had the skill, they had the speed, they had the heart. But when opponents started throwing their weight around, when the hits got heavier and the scrums got nastier, something was missing. That sandpaper element that separates pretenders from contenders in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Josh Anderson brought that edge. But at 32 and entering his final contract year, he's a depreciating asset on borrowed time. Zach Bolduc shows promise. But promise doesn't win playoff series when you're getting outmuscled in the corners and losing board battles that determine possession. Kent Hughes knows this. He's seen the analytics, watched the video breakdowns, felt the sting of elimination. The GM who rebuilt this franchise from the ground up understands that skill without grit is like a Ferrari without an engine. Beautiful to look at, but it won't get you where you need to go. Enter AJ Greer, 6'3", 209 pounds of Quebec-born intensity. A player who doesn't just talk about bringing sandpaper to the lineup. He delivers it with surgical precision. 203 hits last season, 222 the year before. These aren't accidental collisions or incidental contact. This is a man who understands that hockey is a contact sport and embraces every bone-jarring moment of it. But here's where it gets interesting. Greer isn't just a one-dimensional enforcer collecting paychecks for throwing hits. Last season, something clicked. 32 points in 78 games. Nearly double his previous output. The kind of offensive surge that transformed a role player into a legitimate two-way threat. Was it a fluke? A career year driven by perfect circumstances and favorable matchups? Or is this the emergence of a player who's finally putting all the pieces together? The answer to that question could determine whether Hughes pulls the trigger on what might be the most underrated signing of the summer. The Stanley Cup ring on Greer's finger tells a story that resonates in Montreal's locker room. Championship experience. The knowledge of what it takes to climb that final mountain. In a room where only Alex Newhook can claim Cup champion status, that veteran presence becomes invaluable currency. Picture the scenario. Game 7, second round of the playoffs. The building is electric. The hits are flying, and Montreal needs someone to step up when the opposition tries to intimidate their skilled forwards. Do you want a player who's been there before, who's felt the weight of playoff pressure and emerged victorious? Or do you want to hope your young core can figure out on the fly? The financial reality creates its own drama. Last season's $850,000 cap hit was highway robbery for what Greer delivered. But Michael McCarron's recent 6-year, $3.3 million deal with Minnesota has reset the market for physical forwards. If McCarron commands that money after a 17-point season, what does a 32-point campaign with championship pedigree demand? Hughes faces a delicate balancing act. Overpay, and you're hamstrung by an albatross contract that limits future flexibility. Lowball the offer, and you watch a perfect fit walk away to sign elsewhere. The margin for error is razor thin when you're building a contender on a budget. But there's an X factor that could tip the scales in Montreal's favor. Greer isn't just another free agent looking for the biggest payday. He's a kid from Joliet who grew up bleeding blue Blanc Rouge. A player who once emptied his bank account, spending his last $200 just to watch his childhood heroes play at the Bell Center. That emotional connection can't be quantified in spreadsheets or salary cap calculations. It's the kind of intangible that transforms good players into great teammates, that turns mercenaries into warriors willing to bleed for the logo on their chest. Imagine the narrative. Local kid returns home to help his childhood team capture their first Stanley Cup in over 3 decades. The marketing writes itself, but more importantly, the motivation becomes unshakable. Players perform differently when they're not just playing for a paycheck, but for a dream they've carried since childhood. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Montreal's young core is ready to take the next step, but they need veteran leadership that understands playoff hockey's physical demands. They need someone who can teach them that skill alone won't be enough when the stakes are highest. Hughes must make this call, not just because Greer fills a roster need, but because he represents something bigger. He's the bridge between Montreal's skilled future and their gritty past. The player who can teach Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield that talent without toughness is a recipe for playoff disappointment. The question isn't whether Greer would improve the Canadiens. The question is whether Hughes has the vision to see beyond traditional roster construction and understand that championship teams need players who embrace the dirty work. July 1st approaches like a deadline that will define this franchise's trajectory. Hughes can play it safe, focus, on skill and speed, and hope it's enough when the playoffs arrive. Or he can make the bold move that gives Montreal the identity they desperately need. This is about more than adding sandpaper to the lineup. This is about sending a message to the entire organization that Montreal is serious about building a championship culture, that they understand playoff hockey requires a different breed of player. The clock is ticking. The decision awaits. And somewhere in Joliet, AJ Greer is waiting to see if his childhood dreams might finally become reality. Will Kent Hughes pull the trigger on the signing that could transform Montreal's playoff identity? Hit that like button if you believe Greer is exactly what the Canadiens need. And subscribe because this summer's moves will determine whether Montreal becomes a legitimate cup contender or remains stuck in mediocrity.